All right, we're live, and you really did play intro music. All right, so we're live, and want to welcome, say ETM Hotep to all of the viewers who will be watching the archives and who will be tuning in live. Tonight is
I want to
our
welcome,
and
let
say
me
ETM Hotep to
mute
all of the
myself.
viewers who will be watching the archives. And all right, let's try this again. One more time. Yeah, ETM Hotep, welcome to Wednesday's Divine Words Wednesdays. You are hanging with the Seshew mdw-nTr. Those of us who have come together and see the importance of learning the language of ancient Egypt that we know as Rani Kemet, and the importance of learning the language in order to make or have a meeting of the minds with the illustrious civilization that's responsible for everything that you see that's commercialized and glorified and romanticized about Egypt. The only way we're going to know how or why such a civilization grew to its grandeur is to tap into the minds of the people responsible for it. And the only way that we can do that is through the language. As we come to understand that language is the DNA of culture. Culture is transmitted through language. So the psychology, the worldview of the people is stamped or recorded within the language. So we find it important, very important for us to learn the language in order to tap into that mentality as a resource for what we can utilize to help us today. All right. So we don't want to live in the past, but we can learn a lot from the past. So we use ancient Kemet and the mentality and the traditions and the ways as a resource, similar to mining as a resource for what we can use today. Use it as tools. All right. So this Wednesday, we're going to switch it up a little bit. For the past previous Wednesdays, we have been emphasizing method, and we always emphasize method. So tonight, in that regard, it's not going to be anything different, but we're going to switch it up a little bit where we're going to discuss a topic that is seems to be important, and we need a reminder of it. And the topic is that of good character versus bad character. You know, a lot of people are witnessing within the social community, on social media. We're witnessing a lot of bad character, people displaying bad character. And by bad character, it's just as simple as disrespect. We're seeing a lot of disrespect being displayed between people. Um, a lot of debating going on. There's absolutely nothing wrong with debating and even arguing. For the true sense of what an argument is. But when you disagree with someone and then that disagreement turns into disrespect, then that is telling in terms of a person's character. Because if you have good character, you can disagree with someone and still maintain a level of respect. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing with someone and maintaining respect. And it's possible and it's easy, and that's the way that things should go, but that's not what we're witnessing. So tonight's topic, we want to kind of focus on good character versus bad character in relationship to the language of Rodney Kemet and Kemet in general. And can we find examples of good character in Kemet or some guidance for good character in Kemet? All right. How did the ancient Remich or the ancient Egyptians view character? How did they view character? And was it important? So these are the kind of this is the theme of tonight's discussion. And before I continue, um, we have members on the Seshew mdw-nTr on the panel, and maybe you all can give kind of like a roll call, introduce, and let the viewers know who we have chiming in for tonight. I'll start with myself. My name is Wujau. I'm on Facebook as Wujau Iri Maat, and I'm going to be your point guard for tonight, passing the baton back and forth to all the other members. Yeah.
Hotep,
All right.
Uncle Josh Ned, greetings. This is Brother or Rennie. My name is Antoine Germain. also known as Hush Your Mouth on Google. And I'll be assisting tonight with the discussion and also with using of the Vigus dictionary.
All right. Who else do we have?
ATM Hotep, um, Hekanu N, Aminarab Ptah Kwai, Sekum. My name is Kofi Paisai, and I hope y'all enjoy the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
All right. Well, Kofi says a mouthful. I like that. That's good. Wake those people up, Kofi.
ETM Hotep, welcome in peace, everybody. This is June. I just want to say thanks for all the support and all those people out there that was waiting for the link, waiting for the show to start. Sorry we starting late today, but thanks for tuning in. Hotep.
Son Demo.
ETM Hotep. This is Damo, Damian Everly on Facebook. Welcome in peace, and just enjoy the discussion. If you get a chance, chime in, ask some questions. Enjoy.
Hotep, this is Tonika, and I hope you guys get to enjoy the show. I know I'm definitely going to be enjoying this show because, as you say, one of the reasons why we learn what we're trying to learn with Kemet is so that we can be able to um, apply what it is that we have studied. So this is definitely interesting, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm definitely going to enjoy it. Welcome.
All right. Good. And you know what? And on that note, um, that's a good point as far as application of information. We often witness a lot of information being shared because obviously we're on social media, and social media is a very good platform to network with people, to share information, and that's all good. But we also have to keep in mind that the medium of social media is also a platform for disinformation and misinformation as well. So we have to develop ways to discern good information from bad information, from accurate information, from inaccurate information, and so on and so forth. And that comes with some studying and some training and putting in some time and having the discipline and staying power to actually go through that kind of training. Otherwise, people will be, as they say, you're going whichever way the wind blows. You're just flapping in the wind. And that reminds me of a commercial. I forgot which product was being sold, but it was a commercial where somebody was walking down the street and the person asked them a question, and they gave an answer, and they said, "Well, how do you know that?" And then the answer was, "It's on the internet." As if the internet is the end all be all. As long as the internet says it, it must be true. So we don't want to fall into that situation, but there are people who are falling somewhat into that kind of situation where people are just accepting things because it sounds good, or they may like the person who's relaying the information and things of that nature. So we don't want to fall into that trap. So one of the things we need to do more of as a body of students and people who are trying to liberate our minds and study and things like that in the social community is to apply the information that we're actually learning. That's a question that people need to ask themselves, look themselves in the mirror and ask themselves, out of all the books that you're spending all this money on, out of all the books that you have read, borrowed at the libraries, collected on PDFs and things like that, how much of it are we actually applying? And how much of it is applicable in the first place? You know, because sometimes we want to read things for entertainment purposes, and that's perfectly fine. Then there's information that is should be effective or affect change in our lives, but it can only do that if we apply it. You know, and you have to surround yourself by people that will encourage that change or that will encourage that growth as well. Because it's hard to try to do things solo, because you can have the good intentions of learning something to apply it to change your life for whatever reason. Take for example, losing weight. People who feel that they're overweight, they want to lose weight, they have every intention on losing weight, and they get on these different diets, but if they don't have the support system around them, it's easy to fall off the bandwagon. Once you start, you can jump right back off, eating the chitlins and fat back. That's probably wrong for me to say that, but unhealthy foods, I should say. So bottom line is that we need to surround ourselves by an environment that's a support system. So, but that's a question that we all need to ask. Are we, or am I, applying the information that I'm learning? Am I applying the information that I'm sharing with people? If I talk about Maat, if I talk about the principles of Maat and things like that, whatever I'm sharing, am I actually applying it in my life? Am I doing the best that I can? Because we're all a work in progress. You know, we can't hold our heads up high as though we have every single thing figured out and we are have no room for growth. We're all a work in progress, but we have to just do our best. And people need to just ask themselves and internalize that question themselves and judge themselves. Am I applying this information, to the best of my ability? Do I see my own personal growth? Do the people around me see my growth? Things like that. So with that being said, we can jump into our discussion. I do want to share my screen because, as I said before, we always like to emphasize the method in transliterating and translating. So we'll start with that, and I will share my screen. Okay, so can someone let me know if you can see my screen? Actually, let me try. Let me- All right, can you see my screen?
Two.
Okay. All right, good. All right, I'll become a master at this Hangout stuff eventually. All right, so um, yeah, this first slide, this is who we are, Seshew, mdw-nTr, and this is Divine Words Wednesdays. And if anybody's watching now or watching the archive, if you want to be updated on the future shows, just subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you'll automatically be notified. And we try to schedule ahead of time, so we give you the heads up. But sometimes we have impromptu hangouts, impromptu live hangouts on different subjects. We have Freestyle Fridays and we have Divine Words Wednesdays. But in between those days, we may pop out of the blue and have a hangout, and you may be interested in it. So subscribe so you can keep up with that. And this is a background of who we are as a group, Seshew mdw-nTr. And on the website, mdw-nTr.com, that's mdw-nTr.com, there's a page dedicated to the explanation of the Seshew mdw-nTr, where the name came from, or what inspired the name of the group. So it's a nice breakdown, a short, concise breakdown of the name, where it came from. So I pretty much already um, said all of this, but to say it again, we are a group of aspiring true scribes of divine words. And basically, we came together because we see the importance of tapping into the mentality of the people who are responsible for such a ingenious civilization. Everybody and their mother around the world glorifies Egypt. I mean, even people who are racist against uh, other races of blacks and Africans still, in some form or fashion, glorify Kemet, glorify Egypt. They may not admit that Egypt was a black African civilization, but nonetheless, they still glorify it, they commercialize it, and so on. Even if not publicly, they do so privately. And a lot of these different occult or fraternal organizations, they do so. You know, but we see the importance of the culture and tapping into the culture. In order to tap into the culture and tap into the minds, we understand that we have to do so by way of the language, because language, as I said before, is the DNA of culture. Culture is transmitted through language. All right. It's so much about language that we take for granted, And it takes a person to actually study a language to really realize and see these different things. We had a conversation earlier, Brother Chris, who hopefully will be joining us a little later, had brought up some points about the literary devices used in several different languages. And we see all of them being used in Rani Kemet, or is what most people know as ancient Egyptian. All right. So our purpose on Divine Words Wednesdays, our main purpose is to demonstrate the fact that the Seshew mdw-nTr, which is the indigenous word for hieroglyphs, has been deciphered. So hopefully by us doing this enough, and not just us, there's a lot of people who are transliterating and translating. You have a lot of teachers out there. To name a few, we have Dr. Riketi Amin, Benochi Montgomery, Mfundishi, myself, and others. Those are the names I mentioned are ones that I see advertised classes, but there's others who have private classes, study groups that are transliterating and translating ancient Egyptian texts. So hopefully eventually we can eliminate the opinion that people have of the script not being deciphered. We can eliminate that and do away with that. You know, um, there's some people that still believe that, but they're in the minority. So we want to be able to eliminate that altogether. And then two, we show the methods for doing so. We demonstrate the methods, and we're going to get into that in a second. And then three, by us doing all of this, we show that because we can do it, then anybody else can do it, because we're not anything or anyone special. We don't have this translation gene within our genetics that nobody else has or anything like that. We're just like everybody else, and if we can do it, you can do it. A lot of us have just the average life. We got children, we got jobs or businesses that we run. So the same amount of time that everybody else has or spare time, we utilize the same thing. Me personally, I really don't watch TV like that. So I'd rather spend a lot of my time that I would have watched TV back in the day. I dedicate that to studying and just learning, because I mean information it's just exciting period to learn new things and to actually review old things, to have a sometimes you have to review old information that you've learned a long time ago with a new set of eyes and a new paradigm that you have. All right. Now, the translation methods that we use.
We have a couple brothers who have entered the group.
Okay, let me get them in real quick. Let me shift over. We have Brother Sitep joining us, and who else? Oh, Sitep. All right. ETM Hotep, Brother Sitep.
Hotep.
At the famous Sitep in Ra, Mary Amin. Yes, indeed. Graced us with his presence. Let me stop. All right, here we go. So we're going to get back into...
Yeah, I was out on that lake fishing. I was killing them out there. Me and my son. We was killing them, But yeah, I had to come to the meeting, man. So I'm here.
Catching reef.
Yeah, we was catching bluegills, we was catching big old bass, all that.
All right, that's good. That's good. Fishing teaches patience. I mean, I know you already know that, but for those who don't fish, because I come from a family of fishers, and we go crabbing and fishing. And one thing, if you don't do anything else, fishing will definitely teach you patience. Sometimes you don't even get a bite. So, all right. But yeah, welcome. So picking up where I left off, our translation method, we go through 4 steps, and these 4 steps are done by everyone. This is not unique to the Seshew Māori mdw-nTr. It's not unique to Wujau or anyone in particular. These methods are done by everyone. Even if we were to go back in time 3,000 to 5,000 years and read the language directly and speak it properly with its accurate pronunciations and so on and so forth, this is what we would do. It's just that we would do it tremendously fast because we would know the language like the back of our hand. So the 4 steps are: step 1 is to determine the direction in which the signs are to be read. Step 2, identify and document each individual sign. Step 3, group the signs into words to be searched in dictionaries. Step 4, come up with a sensible translation. All right. Now, like I said, the speed in which you perform these steps will be directly related to your proficiency and competency in the language. So even with English, you know, even in me reading these lines here on the screen, um, I'm actually performing these 4 steps because I'm determining the direction which the signs are to be read. Now, that step is like a snap because I know English is read from left to right all the time, except for, in advertisements and multimedia type of things where we do little artwork. But step 2, identify and document each individual sign. That happens in a snap because I already know my ABCs. We learned that in grade school, and it's only 26 letters of the alphabet, so I can identify all of these characters on the screen real quickly. Step 3, group the signs into words. Now in English, this is done for me because we have spaces. So I have determined, then a space, the word the, space, direction, etc. So that's easy. And then step 4, come up with a sensible translation. Now, because I speak English and my framework is anchored or positioned in English semantics, then I don't have to translate that. I don't have to translate any words because this is the language that I grew up speaking. But I say all of this to say is that even though I'm doing these steps, and even though I know English and things like that, I'm still doing these steps. It's just that I'm doing it at a very, very fast pace. So these steps, to reiterate, these steps are done by everyone. It's not unique to us, Seshew, Maat, mdw-nTr, or any particular person. All right. Just wanted to let that be known. So for tonight, now normally in our previous sessions, we would grab a picture of an inscription, and then we would, go through the different steps. But tonight we're gonna switch it up and do something a little different. Tonight we're gonna be discussing the Maxims of Ptah Hotep. Okay, and what you're seeing on the screen is a facsimile of the actual primary source of the Maxims of Ptah Hotep. Now, in case you can't find it under the name Maxims of Ptah Hotep, this papyrus is also known as the Papyrus Prissy. Okay, and it's named after a lot of the different papyrus, like you have the Rhines mathematical papyri, the Moscow papyrus, and these names that are given, that Egyptologists give to these papyri, different papyri, they're either named for the person who purchased it, in the early 1900s, 1800s, when a lot of these excavations were taking place. Sometimes they were sold to a museum or to private collections and so on and so forth. So the people who once owned these papyri, their names will be attached to them, or they may just be known by number, by the catalog number. All right, so when we say Papyrus Prissy, you can look that up and you'll find out how and where they found it and so on and so forth. But within this papyri, there are a couple of different texts. You have the text of the instructions to Ka Gimni, and also what we're dealing with is the Maxims of Ptah Hotep. All right. Now, this script that you're looking at on the screen is a script that Egyptologists call hieratic. All right. So this is what the original was recorded in, and if you look at it, it looks somewhat different. To some people, it may look a lot different than the formal mdw-nTr, which we know also as hieroglyphs. All right, but now this is a step away from the formal pictorial writing of hieroglyphs, or mdw-nTr. All right, and it's for this reason that everyone who's learning Rani Kemet or the Egyptian language start off with the formal hieroglyphs rather than hieratic. And it's just a basic, simple logic involved with why we learn hieroglyphs before we would learn hieratic in terms of a script. Because the entire purpose of learning any script is for the function of what scripts are. And a script's function is to represent that which is spoken. And the only reason why we even speak a language is to communicate to one another. It's a tool of communication, tool of transmissions of thoughts. So the script of any particular language, its effectiveness is how well can it relay that which is spoken with the least amount of ambiguity and vagueness and so on and so forth as possible. All right, so this is why even in English, when we want to deal with very important documents or we want to pinpoint accuracy, we always tell people to print as opposed to write in cursive. You know, even on applications, when you want to fill out a job application, a bank loan, mortgage, or whatever the case is, they always tell you to print and sign your name or print your address. You know, you would rarely see someone write their address in cursive handwriting because common sense will tell you that you run the risk of the person who's reading it, they may get it wrong, and then you will never get your package, or the package will never reach its destination, and so on and so forth. So even in English, we understand that a more precise and clear, effective way of writing is in print. So it's only logical and common sense to us in order to learn Rani Kemet, our best bet is to learn the formal hieroglyphs first because it's very clear, very precise, and we can tap into the language itself and what everything means, and then we can learn hieratic and even Demotic and Coptic afterwards. Because once you learn the actual language and the grammar of the language and the syntax, how the word order and things like that, then it's easy to just learn another script, because what we're looking at on the screen here, we can still make out a lot of the different signs here, but you just have to train yourself to make a one-for-one correspondence between, let's just say, the folded cloth here that you see where my cursor is. If you can see my cursor, that still looks pretty much the same as it does in the formal hieroglyphs. You have a leg over here, and so on. You can see all these different legs. Now, some of the signs like this is an owl, but this doesn't look like an owl. But you can train yourself to do the one-for-one correspondences through time, through practice, through time, and through effort. All right. So it's not hard to learn this particular script at all. It's just that logically we learn hieroglyphs first as a logical step to learn the language. All right. So just wanted to let that be for an FYI. But this is the particular text that we're talking about, Papyrus Prissy, in particular, the Maxims of Ptah Hotep. All right, now, I have this slide here entitled Terminology, just to share with the viewers watching live and in the archive that we use a different, slightly different terminology, and some people may get a little confused about the words that we use, so just wanted to explain a few of them. So instead of saying Egypt, we use the word Kemet. All right. Now we know Kemet was known by a few different names, not just Kemet. We know that Kemet was also called Tawi. It was also called Tameri, and it was also called Khenu. Tawi means two lands. Tameri means land of cultivation, or literally land of the hoe. But we know that the hoe, the gardening hoe, was used for agriculture, a land of agriculture. And in Khenu, which means the residency, or more literally the interior. All right, and in Kemet is the fertile land. All right, so we use Kemet when we identify with Egypt. All right.
Can I ask a quick question about Tameri?
No problem.
Tameri as beloved land.
Yeah, well, the word mer means to the wish or to desire. So some people will translate this as the beloved land. But when you look at it in primary text, and I always say this, is that meaning is always born out of context. Okay. When we say there's a difference between the meaning of a word versus its definition, because definitions are found in dictionaries, of which the ancient Remich did not have. But definitions are found in dictionaries, but the use of the word and the intended meaning is always born in the context in which it's used. So when you look at Tameri in the way that it's used, it will be used just like Kemet. People will translate Kemet as the black land or the land of the blacks, and then people will use that to say that the word Kemet identifies the people's skin color as them being black. But anyone who would make that claim or is of that opinion, they are unable to provide any contextual support for that. It's because once you go into the primary literature itself, you will see that Kemet is used in contra in opposition, I should say, to another word, desheret or desher. So here we have Kim meaning black. It does mean black literally as an adjective, and then desher literally means red as an adjective. But Kemet and desheret are used metaphorically to identify the fertile areas of the nation versus desheret meaning the infertile areas of the nation. And that's what you'll get when you read it in context. So likewise with Tameri, to answer your question, Tameri is often used as opposed to Taseti, where you have a land of the bow, where people were skilled in hunting, and therefore they were skilled naturally if they were good hunters with the bow and the arrow and things like that, and the spear. It was a land of the bow, considered Taseti the land of the bow. Then you have people who were skilled in agriculture, skilled in farming, skilled in that mode of production. So you have the land of agriculture and the land of the bow coming from hunting, and things like that. So this is what you'll walk away with in terms of the primary literature. All right. And then also Kinu means the interior. All right. As we know that in ancient Africa, especially in the Nile Valley, nations were set up with natural borders. By natural borders, I mean borders, on the east and west of Kemet were mountains and or desert. And then to the north and south, I should say to the north on our maps, to the north, the natural border was the Mediterranean Sea. And then to the south was the first cataract. That was the southern border of Kemet. So we had the mountains, the desert, the sea, and then we have the cataracts of the Nile itself that provided the borders for Kemet itself. So Kenu was the interior, the middle of all of that. All right, so this is where context is important. All right, and one quick second, I'm getting a lot of notifications. Make sure I'm still on. I apologize for that. When I share my full screen, I feel handicapped because I can no longer see the Hangout session. All right. So was that clear, Brother Antoine?
Yeah, that was clear. What made it clear is the fact that you compared it to Taseti. So Taseti, land of the bow, and then Tameri, land of cultivation. So that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, and remember, there's a lot of themes that deals in dualities, that deals in duals. So we have Kemet versus Desheret, Tameri versus Taseti. We have Tashamau versus Tamehu. A lot of these, oppositions or direct opposites, these dualities. And then we have in English, people translate upper Kemet versus lower Kemet, and together they're known as Tawi, or the unification of those two larger confederations into one is called Samatawi, and we just refer to it as Tawi for short, which is two lands. All right. So now, another uh, term that we use is Rani Kemet, and you hear me say that all the time, Rani Kemet, and that is the term used for the Egyptian spoken language. Okay, and Rani Kemet breaks down as you see this open mouth here, which is Ra, which is the word for mouth, literally the mouth, and then Ni, which means of or belonging to, and then Kemet. So literally this would read the mouth of Kemet, but we know land masses or whatever literally doesn't that they don't have a mouth. So this is used, as an idiom for language, that which comes out of the mouth. In Africa, the mouth is always associated with language. So we have the language of Kemet. All right, so that's why it refers to the spoken language. Okay, so again, that's Rani Kemet. All right, so we no longer say Egyptian or Egyptian language and things like that. We just say Rani Kemet. Now, hieroglyphs, a lot of people are already familiar with this one. We refer to it as Seshew mdw-nTr, and this means the inscriptions of divine words. All right, and a lot of people are already familiar with that. And then hieratic, we refer to it as mdw-nTr, which means the inscriptions of divine books, because as a lot of people may already know, that hieratic is a Greek term that's used by the Greeks to identify the form of writing that they observe the Kemetic priest in possession of. And they were in the temples recording and in possession reading from and recording different texts in a more laid back, faster fashion that we saw in the Papyrus Prissy that I just showed. And they referred to it as priestly writing. And in the Greek language, priestly writing would equate to this word hieraticus, and we just simply say hieratic. But the closest indigenous name to that which the priests were actually writing in and reading from is called Seshew mdw-nTr, which is the inscriptions of divine books, because of what the priests were recording was considered divine, or about the divine, about the different divinities that we know as Neteru. All right. And then demotic is also from a Greek term, which is another script that Egyptologists have identified separately and call it demotic, from the Greek word demoticus, which means popular. And the indigenous term for demotic was seshnishat, which means inscriptions of letters. And it was the more common form of writing, and it came later. So this was it was a faster, and what made it have the ability to be written a lot faster is because it is the script that is the most furthest from the formal pictures. So when you look at this script, I don't have an example to show on the screen at the moment, but if you were to look at the Maat script, you don't recognize any of the formal hieroglyphs at all, or formal Seshew mdw-nTr at all anymore. At least with Seshew mdw-nTr, you can still identify some of them, but with what they're calling demotic, you can't. And actually, demotic looks a lot closer to a very stylized form of Arabic, actually. All right. Okay, so hopefully everyone has that understanding. All right. All right. So now we can get into our topic. Did anybody have any comments about anything so far? I'm getting a lot of notifications here. Let me just. I don't know where those notifications come from. All right. Anybody have any comments or questions?
I did see a question in our live chat. Where can we find the list of Seshew mdw-nTr characters to get familiar with them? That's a question Chosen Lifestyle asked.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. And actually, you can if anyone's familiar with the Gardner codes and the Gardner sign list, there is an equivalent sign list made by someone else for the hieratic characters, for the hieratic signs, and it's made by a person whose last name is Mueller. All right, and what we can do is after we conclude this session, I'll provide a link to where you can get more information about that. All right, but just to let you know now that there does exist a similar sign list to how Gardner has the sign list for the formal Seshew mdw-nTr, which are hieroglyphs. There also exists a sign list for the hieratic. All right. And the way that the person put it together is that they're going through some very popular hieratic texts, and they're looking at that, and they basically have about 4 to 8 different hieratic texts, and they're pulling different signs from those 4 to 8 major inscriptions, and they're showing you the slightly different variations of the way things are written. Because as I said, the formal hieroglyphs, they're pretty standardized and they pretty much look the same. But when it comes to hieratic, what they're calling hieratic, depending on the era of time and depending on the scribal house that these inscriptions were copied and things like that, you may see a slight differentiation between one particular sign from the same sign in a different era from a different scribal house. So this person Mueller, he has put together, he's documented some of the different styles. All right, so we'll be sure to include a link to that. All right. So hopefully the brother got understands that. All right. So now our topic for this evening. Now let me see.
So we had one more question that's related to the teachings of Ptah Hotep.
Okay.
Kind of wants that question more or less was, is it the oldest Egyptian literature?
Ptah Hotep.
Yes.
Oh well, that's what they call it, but it depends on how you define literature, because they say that the pyramid text is the oldest religious book, and then they will attribute the Maxims of Ptah Hotep with the oldest literature. So that's what those two different things are being called. So it depends on what you're referring to as literature, because there's inscriptions that are older than the Papyrus Prissy or the Maxims of Ptah Hotep. All right, so it just, in other words, I'm just saying it just depends on what you're going to call literature. But for the most part, for our idea of what literature is, a compilation of different inscriptions in a book form or whatever, like a lengthy composition or whatever, then yes, the Maxims of Ptah Hotep would be the oldest form of literature in the Nile Valley, as far as what's attested. All right, something tangible that we can see, and I just showed a facsimile. Put this back up. It's a facsimile of just a portion of it. All right, and it's actually just in the Maxims of Ptah Hotep. There's actually over 600 lines within it. All right. I hope that answered the question. I don't want to, I want to get into the, basically I'm saying depends on what people are referring to as literature, because the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of, there's a lot of talk between which writing came first. Was it Sumerian versus Egyptian and things like that? But in the scholastic world, it depends on how you're defining what writing actually is. People look at rock art, and people who don't know better, they'll call that writing. So they'll say, well, rock art dates to 10,000 BC, and that comes before Kemet and so on and so forth, and then people will argue over it, but they don't understand the scientific terms and scientific use and nomenclature of these different words. They have specific meanings. So the same thing with what we're referring to as literature versus just writing, or versus, the kind of literature, because as I said, they refer to the pyramid text as the oldest religious text, and the Maxims of Ptah Hotep is oldest literature in general, or wisdom text. All right. All right. So, as I said earlier, our theme for tonight is a discussion on good character. All right. And I think it's a timely topic to discuss briefly. We're not going to spend too much time on it, just to briefly open up the discussion. Hopefully people can if you're watching now or watching the archive, then you can keep the discussion going separately, because I feel that good character, or character in general, is important, is an important topic, because we take it for granted. But anyway, so let's start off with what is character. All right, so we have a definition. This is out of the dictionary, online dictionary, dictionary.com. It says character, the aggregate of features and traits that form the individual nature of some person or thing. Okay. And then this this is the etymology of the word character. The ultimate source of the word character is Greek character, and I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly from the Greek, but it's a derivative of the verb kerasin. And again, excuse my pronunciation for those who do speak Greek. And it means to sharpen, engrave, or cut, which in turn came from karax, which means pointed stake. Character meant engraved mark, and hence was applied metaphorically. And that's a key thing to make note of. It literally means engraved mark, but it was applied metaphorically to the particular impress or stamp which marked one thing as different from another. In other words, its character. And the word came into English via Latin character and Old French character, and characteristics followed in the 17th century. Okay, but mind you of the metaphoric application of this word. So literally, it meant to engrave something, or to cut. From the verb to cut, to sharpen, or to engrave. As a noun, it meant an engraved mark, but it was applied metaphorically as a word to distinguish. It's a word of distinguishing. So it's to mark one thing is different from the other. All right. Now, the reason why I say make note of that metaphoric application is that we have the same thing that happened and taken place in Rani Kemet. All right, before the Greeks. Okay, so here we have, let me start down at the bottom here. We have an equivalent word in meaning, the word ked, which means form, nature, reputation, character, disposition, extent. All right, and you see these signs here, these glyphs here. They all share the KD. This is a biliteral of a QD, actually. K with the dot under it is diacritic transliteration that you see here, but it's transliterated as a QD or KED, and I gave the meaning. And then a plural, when applied to more for a group of people, is KEDEDU or KEDU, which is the character of a group of people or a community of people. All right. Now, this word here, now notice that you have this sign here, and then you have the next sign here of a hand. And you see those signs in all three of these words. But now the difference between the bottom one and the other two is that what we call a determinative at the end will give the semantic meaning of the word for us. It helps us out. This particular word, although it's transliterated the same, QD, it means to build or to fashion. So if I go back to this etymological breakdown of character, you see this metaphoric application from something that was physically done to something, to cut, to grave, to scratch something in or whatever, an engraved mark, used metaphorically to speak about a distinguishing factor of between one thing from another. Its character. So we see something similar going on here, where we have building, and then we have words that are um, transliterated alike, possibly sounded different, because Seshew mdw-nTr does not include or document the vowels. So we don't. It would be unscientific for us to assume that these sounded exactly alike. But in terms of transliteration, in terms of the actual signs that are used within these, we see similarities. All right, that's what we can see and be sure of. So we have a word ked, which means to build, and then the word ked, which is deals with character. And I say that because this same metaphoric application is done to this very day in the few systems of character building that we have today. And one such institution of character building that a lot of people are familiar of, whether they have a hate or love relationship with it, is the institution of Freemasonry. Freemasonry, when you look up Freemasonry, the blanket description of Freemasonry is that it takes good men and make them better by using a system of symbols, systems of instructions veiled in allegory and symbols utilized to, build good character. All right. And in Freemasonry, they utilize actual literal building tools of stone masons, and they use them in a symbolic way, or as an allegory, as I say, symbolism is an allegory, and metaphors and so on and so forth, to teach and utilize in terms of building a person's character. All right. And anybody, you could look up on the internet and find that, people who are involved with Freemasonry, when they enter into such institutions as men, you start off as what they would call a rough, jagged looking piece of rock that they call a rough.
Asher.
Exactly, a rough ashlar. So you're just rough around the edges. Even we still use those idioms today, and outside of the Masonic world, we'll say, hey man, you're a little rough around the edges there, brother. Whatever the case is. And the whole thing is that when you get into this institution, you're supposed to be guided and instructed, and you're supposed to build your character to end up as a smooth brick or a smooth stone that they call a perfect ashlar, so that you can be placed within a more grander temple as one of the pieces of a bigger temple. So you see that kind of metaphoric application today within that institution, and even in our regular speech, we have these kind of metaphors and idioms that we use. All right, so I wanted to point that out, that we have a build, then we have character, and the sharing of these signs here or glyphs here for both. Okay, and then up here at the top, this word here is the word cheben, and it means to be distorted of character. Okay, and notice that this determinative here is a man with a stick in the hand. This is the same determinative for the word siba, which means to teach or to discipline, because when you're teaching someone, it is a function of a teacher that provides discipline for younger children. Okay, so this stick in the hand is a determinative. A man with a stick in the hand is a determinative for things that are done by way of some kind of guidance, and even in some cases coercion, guidance, and even some kind of force. All right, but Kevin is to be distorted of character. Then we have the same word. You have this sign here in the legs and the in, and all of these words are transliterated as Kevin or Cheben. And we have the word here with a different determinative, that is the word for crime or offense. And then the last one is crime. So we can see the application of criminal, the criminal element that was in the Nile Valley. One of the views was that crime was a result of distorted character. And this is something that we recognize and realize today, even in our criminal justice system, where criminals, well, actually, we know about it today, but there's hardly anything in place to resolve it, because right now we understand that the criminal justice system is is very corrupt, because we have people basically go from school and the prison system. Prison, the prison industrial complex has become big business. So there's not very much institutions of rehabilitation for those people who actually do commit crimes and go in and serve their time and get rehabilitated. But now, if it was done properly, that rehabilitation would be an institution of building up the person's character, because crime was seen and is still seen to this very day as a result of distorted character. All right, a person who would physically harm someone, a person who is a person who would steal from someone, or whatever the case is, we have uh, criminal psychologists who study, the minds of different criminals. They have tons and tons of reports on the criminal mind and things like that. You see it on TV in forms of documentary, and they take those scientific observations and even exaggerate it and create these different TV shows and movies from them as well. So I'm just saying that to say that we recognize this, and even it was recognized that way in ancient times, that crime, or what was being called crime, had to do with distorted character. All right, so just keep all that in mind. All right. Now, that brings us to some examples of the maxims of Ptah Hotep. All right, and I guess we're going to utilize these particular lines to kind of demonstrate how to transliterate and translate as well, even though we pretty much see it all on the screen, but we can explain it. And maybe someone else on the panel, I feel like I'm hogging the mic. Someone else on the panel can break down line 42 or 43, whichever one is, if anyone's prepared to break down one of these lines in terms of our methods on how to transliterate and translate it. The transliteration is already given, and the translation actually, but just to explain it, if anybody on the panel wants to go for it.
All right. I know we have the first thing I would do if I was to do a transliteration or in translation is I would look at the directions, and this one's set up to go left from right, and then after that that would be my step one, determine direction. Step two, I would look at each glyph, and I would grab my Gardner codes for each glyph. And so as I grab my Gardner codes, looks like we just have our brother June just joined the call.
Okay, let me just include him real quick.
And
here.
Now currently I don't have the Gardner codes. I know we do have them pulled as we pulled them to do the to get the Jace test up. So if anyone would like to share the Gardner codes for the individuals who are on the panel or individuals viewing in the future.
All right, and if not, just to briefly go through the steps, like you said, you already mentioned the direction. Now, I do want to go back. Let me go back here. All right. Now, this is the primary text. Obviously, I already made mention that this was originally written in hieratic. And what I forgot to mention is that usually when dealing with hieratic inscriptions from the primary sources, Egyptologists have a habit of transcribing the hieratic into the hieroglyphs. Okay, so so instead of working with the hieratic all the time, they transcribe it into the formal Seshew mdw-nTr or hieroglyphs, and then they work from there. So And in that, you know, in the spirit of that, this is what you're seeing here in terms of line, what's numbered line 42. You're seeing the formal hieroglyphs, but on the actual primary, you will actually be watching or looking at the hieratic, or what we know and what we call Seshew mdw-nTr. All right. So I just wanted to make that clear. So in this particular case, hieratic is almost always written from right to left. So step one would pretty much be similar to how we just automatically assume in English. All English correspondences is written from from left to right, and we can safely assume that all Seshew mdw-nTr or hieratic is written from right to left. Okay, so that's like a snap for step one in terms of looking at the primary. But on the screen, we have it from left to right. So I just wanted to point that out, that this is not the same direction as the primary. But to illustrate our steps, you would identify the direction that these are going in. And like you said, Brother Antoine, this is going from left to right. And then you would identify each and every sign. And in identifying the sign, you would write down the Gardner code and how these different signs are transliterated. We already have it up on the screen, but you would take this first sign, which is the frontal section of a lion, and you will look that up. And
F4.
okay, can you say that again?
That'll be an F4.
Okay, so Gardner code F4, which will be in the category of F, and F is known as the animal body parts. You have E, category E are animals or mammals. Then you have the parts of mammals in F, and obviously this is a part of a line, not a whole line. And you write down the transliteration of that will be H, capital H, capital A, and then T. And then I guess Brother Damo, if you have any more, you can continue on with the rest, just to kind of highlight.
The next one will be parts of the human body, D. So you got D36, one of the monoliterals, the arm.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you get that, when you HAT down, and then you get the A. That's where you get that A from. The would be the lowercase a if you used to write it. I mean, it would be the lowercase a if you had the manual decoders for it. But in diacritic, you'll see that sign right there. There's like a small C, almost like a C. But then right behind that, you have the G17, the birds. That's another monoliteral, the owl. That's where you get that M down there standing alone by itself. It's already broken up for you. Then you get that S24.
Yeah.
What is they calling that? The regalia and clothing?
The tied knot.
Yeah, the
Yep.
tie knot. And then below that, you got the, let me see, what does that translate into?
Doorbolt.
You got the
034.
doorbolt. Mm-hmm. Yep, 034. Right behind that, you got the quail chick.
Let me just ask you a quick second.
Uh-huh.
If you can explain now this particular sign here, that's the tied knot. And then the door bolt next to it. What can you tell us about these two signs next to each other in terms of how it's transliterated? In other words, the door bolt is a monoliteral, and by the time that people will sit down and try to transliterate and translate, the monoliteral should already be memorized. So the arm, the owl, and the door bolt, and even this quail chick that you mentioned, these should be known already. So any signs that are not the monoliterals, we automatically know that they're either biliterals or triliterals, which means that this particular sign here is a biliteral or triliteral. So what usually accompanies these biliterals or triliterals in terms of that?
That's a phonetic complement.
Okay, right. So what is that?
So for the transliteration for the first symbol, which is the tie knot, we have the capital T S, and then the phonetic complement is the door bolt, which also is the S. So we wouldn't write the S twice. It's just complementing the sign before it.
Okay, it could. Yeah, excellent. Yep, that's um the point I wanted to bring out. All right. So I'm sorry, Demo, you can continue. I just wanted to point that out because it's something that we don't really we haven't gone through really in the previous sessions.
All right, after that, you get the Quail Chick G43.
Hmm.
Uh, Above that, you have the is that the scroll? What do you call that? Uh,
Tide Papyrus Roll.
Papyrus roll. That's
Yeah.
Y1.
Yep.
The small strokes, Z2.
Hmm.
Another monoliteral N35 water ripple,
Yep.
and S43. Right above that, you got the D46 monoliteral.
Hmm.
Below that, bread loaf X1. Uh, Behind that, man, human male, A category. What we find for that A2, A2A? I know you got the hand to the mouth. What we say mouth is dealing with some type of language, something coming from the mouth.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, you're right. That's A2.
mhm. And after that, you got the Nefer sign F35.
Hmm.
And they also, let me see, like they also spelled it out too, didn't they?
Hmm.
So I9D21X1. So you go from the Nefer F35 to the Horn Viper I9
Hmm.
D21, which is also a monoliteral mouth, and bread loaf. So
So all three of these signs, someone should recognize right away as monoliterals. So again, I'm just to kind of emphasize because I don't think we really emphasized this, but um, this sign here is obviously not a monoliteral, which would tell us that it's either a biliteral or triliteral. So we understand that this is a triliteral, and triliteral stands for three consonants. So this will represent the N, F, and R, Nefer. But then it's accompanied with monoliterals that complement it, and we refer to this as phonetic complements. So you have the horn viper for the F, the open mouth for the R, and then we have the raised bread loaf representing that T to agree with the noun before it, which is medut, that also ends in T. So we have medut neferet, which means eloquent speech. Oh, excuse me, eloquent speech or perfect speech or splendid discourse, as we see translated down here. All right. So, um, because we already have this up on the screen, but that's good. Dua for that, June and Demo. Just trying to stay in line with explaining the four different steps. So, although we have it already on the screen, just wanted to go over that. But in terms of our topic with dealing with character, this is pretty much one of the opening. This is just after the very opening lines in the Maxims of Ptah Hotep. So here we are, starting off here um, with introduction to splendid discourse, and then we go on to line 43, uttered by the noble prince, God's father, beloved of God. And then we have line 44, elder son of the king's body. And then continue on, the prime minister, Ptah Hotep. And this is where we get the name of this particular inscriptions, as Egyptologists will refer to it as the Maxims of Ptah Hotep, or the instructions of Ptah Hotep. So we see his name here, and his title, mdw-nTr, which means prime minister or the overseer of the city. Okay, and usually mdw or mdw-nTr, in today's time we would call that the governor or a mayor, a person who oversees a population of people. Okay, so mdw-nTr, which is what we see here. And then we have his name, Ptah Hotep, right here. And then so this is the Maxims of Ptah Hotep. And what is the purpose of these maxims? And we see it here in the next line. It's intended to instruct the ignorant in knowledge and in the method of eloquence. Okay, and here's this word here that we like to emphasize: method, method, method. And we always say, if you ever familiar with our sessions or whatever, we always refer to it as Tep Hesed. And you see this written here. Tep Hesed is method. All right, best method, correct method, etc. The scientific method, and so on and so on. The word Hesed by itself is literally means to count or to reckon, and when you reckon something, you're calculating it, or you're counting it. Okay, you're piercing into it to take account of something, and this is the best way of doing it. So Tep Hesed, and we translate this combination as method. And then here we have again mdw-nTr, like he had on the other slide. Same thing, of eloquence or perfect speech. Okay, so that's line 48, and then continue on to line 49. Go back some. So in the method of eloquence, as a skill profitable to the attentive learner, but harmful to the disobedient. All right, and in terms of examples and showing the Seshew mdw-nTr, that's all we have on the show. But I wanted to have a more conversation to kind of build on good character in general, and an excellent book that I recommend everyone to get is not only for this topic of good character, but this particular book written by Dr. Theophile Obenga. And by now, hopefully everyone is familiar with Dr. Theophile Obenga. But he wrote a book called African Philosophy, the Pharaonic Period, from 2780 to 330 BC. All right. In this book, I believe it was published, real quick, 2004. All right. This is English version, was published in 2004, but originally it was done in French in 1990. Okay, so 14 years later, it came out in English. All right. So wow. But I recommend everyone to get it. It's in English, so we don't have to worry about translating to French. Because in that book, in this particular book that you see on the screen, the book cover, in that book, Dr. Theophile Obenga does an excellent job to discuss African philosophy in general, but he walks through excerpts of a lot of different texts from Kemet to show and support a lot of the different commentaries that he makes about the subject of African philosophy and how philosophy in and of itself was utilized, created, and espoused on in the Nile Valley, and contrary to what we are taught in school, where the focus is on Greek philosophy. You know, we're taught that Aristotle and Plato and Socrates and all these other Greek philosophers were the fathers of philosophy and so on and so forth. So Dr. Theophilo Benga has done an excellent job throughout this book to show the science and the deep thought that we find in the Nile Valley by going through different various excerpts of different primary texts, such as different texts dealing with cosmology, cosmogony, the mathematical papyri, surgical papyri dealing with surgery, the moral texts such as the wisdom literature, as we're dealing with the Maxims of Ptah Hotep, and he also cross-references other African traditions such as the Dogons, such as the Zulus and things like that. So I would recommend everyone to get this particular book. But for our topic, he talks about the moral or ethical concerns of Kemet, and that's found on pages. Let's see, it starts on page 179 for those who have the book already or plan to get the book. So it starts on page 179 dealing with the Maxims of Ptah Hotep. All right, and so just for our discussion, we pulled out a couple of the paragraphs of his commentary. So we could read through it and have a discussion about what he's already done, because it's no sense in reinventing the wheel. Dr. Theophilo Benga has done an excellent job to talk about it, and we bring it up because this is something that is taken for granted, especially in the social community, as I mentioned, at the beginning of our hangout, that we're seeing a lot of disrespect in the social community. We're seeing a lot of people displaying bad character, people using obscenities when it's not necessary, because when you use obscene language, as you know, let me go back. The word eloquence, remember the word eloquent, to be eloquent is the word mdw-nTr, mdw-nTrut, which is perfect of speech, because what comes out of your mouth, remember, we're not telepathic. Okay, so in order to know what a person is thinking, we use forms of communication, whether it's body language to vocal communication. So therefore, what comes out of your mouth is seen as a result of your mentality. So if you're not able to articulate yourself to the next person in a beneficial way, then it's looked at as though you're corrupt on the inside. And this goes back to this slide where I showed that crime, to actually be offensive, here you see the word offense, to be offensive, to commit a crime. Now, back then, obviously today we have a lot of different words we can use up under the umbrella of crime, stealing, lying, and we got things that we don't even think is a crime. That's a crime today, like getting pulled over for a traffic violation can turn into a criminal offense and things like that. So putting that up to a side, the point here is that what you say out of your mouth and how you conduct yourself was always seen as a result of what is going on inside of you. Now, not inside of you biologically, but inside of your mind, your mental disposition, okay, your mentality. All right. And this goes into your nature, which is the title of our discussion, is your character. Because the actual essence of who and what you are, the outward expression of that is how you behave and how you talk, how you communicate with people. So therefore, to be offensive was to have distorted character. All right. If we go back to um, this word here, medut neferut. So the emphasis here, the purpose of the Maxims of Ptah Hotep was to produce people who were skilled at methods of eloquence. Because if you're skilled at methods of eloquence, therefore you would by default have good character. All right. So that's the point. So what we're seeing today in the social community are people who are displaying bad character. Therefore, inside their mentality, or whatever, there's something that needs to be tweaked. And we don't have too many institutions in place today that actually focus on and builds good character. So this is why I say that it's being taken for granted, and we're giving it a free pass. And if you give it a free pass, it serves as termites, for lack of a better word. If you own a house and you don't get your house checked out for termites, even though you don't see them, eventually over time your house could look good, beautiful, but then 10 years later, your walls are falling apart, or your roof is caving in, it rains and your ceiling is leaking or whatever, and you find out that termites are eating away at it. So this is the same thing that's happening in the social community, where we're giving bad character a pass and we're taking it for granted. So so I think it's appropriate for us to actually bring these issues up again, so that we can stop taking it for granted and we see the importance of it. So and I'm linking this to the importance that was looked at in ancient Kemet, because we want to glorify Kemet. So I mentioned earlier, everyone glorifies Kemet, romanticize Kemet, use Kemet for commercial gain, etc., etc. But the question everyone needs to ask themselves personally: are you actually utilizing the wisdom from Kemet to apply it into your life? Because the Maxims of Ptah Hotep, they're very, very old, and they extended the life of Kemet. Okay, this is not the only one. We have the Maxims of Ptah Hotep, we have the Maxims of Ka-Gimni, the Maxims of Amenhotep, the Maxims of Amenemhet, and so on and so on. Okay, and they're pretty much along the same theme, same lines. Okay, and so this was very important to the people who we glorify. So it was only natural for us to um, honor them correctly by actually utilizing what they've put together. If we're gonna glorify Egypt, then we need to honor that glory by actually learning from what they've created and put together. All right, so I just wanted to kind of tie that in. But if anyone on the panel, would read, and then we can kind of have a little bit more discussion about that. Um, I just wanted to give it some context of how important it is for us to bring this subject up as often as we can, because I'm telling you, the conscious community is severely lacking in the talks about good character. You know, and it almost so much so that it's like an elephant in the room, where everybody notices it, but you don't notice it at the same time. And it's not just in the social community, in this kind of arena. It's in a lot of different places. And I'll just give another quick example. Look at the music industry. Okay, we all like to party, we all like to feel good, we all like to dance, we like what music does to us. So we like it, but we're giving the negative stuff in music a free pass as a compromise, because we like what music does to us. So you take hip hop for example, and even R&B, hip hop and R&B. We're ignoring the elephant in the room. Not everybody. Now, obviously, when I say these things, I'm not talking about every single person. I'm speaking, definitely speaking in, admittedly, in general. In general, we're giving these people in the industries a free pass for the kinds of lyrics that we are hearing. You know, either the bragging about possessions, demeaning women, um, over glorifying materialism, materialistic things, and things like that. These are not principles that will benefit us in the long haul towards our liberation, towards our fighting chance at our liberation, to come on the world stage as as a group of people to be respected. We're known for our entertainment. We're known for our sporting abilities or our athletic abilities. We're known for all of that, but we need to start to be known for and taken serious as a force to be reckoned with on the world stage as a group of people. People talk about nation building and want to build a nation. Well, this subject here, to go back to this particular slide, the word ked, which means nature, reputation, character, disposition, extent. If you ever look up the word nation or nationality, specifically, look up the legal definition of the word nationality. The legal definition of the word nationality is something to the effect of the character that a person has that arises from being a member of a nation. So, in other words, your nationality is your character or disposition that you have that arises from you being a member of a nation. And all that is saying is that, just like in ancient times, um, the place that you grew up in will mold your character, and the character that you express is a direct representation of you being a member of your community. In other words, the community makes you who and what you are in terms of your character, and that character is expressed, and it's a direct relationship from your community or you being a member of a community. This is why I can tell, or we all can tell, to some extent, where people come from. Like I'm here down in Georgia, but if I met someone, I can tell by the way they either talk, by the way they move, by some of the words they use, the different um, idioms and different sayings that they use. I can say, okay, you must be from New York, or you must be from the West Coast, West Side, and things like that, because of their character, their disposition will let me know that because they've been a member of that community. Okay, so if you look up nationality, it's the same thing. But I don't want to get long-winded, but get back to this page. So I kind of want to dig into some of the things that Dr. Theophilo Benga had put forth. So does anybody want to care to read? I don't want to hog the mic. I know people are tired of hearing my voice. So anybody?
All right. An Egyptian maxim, in effect, is veritable ritual performance. It should be so sequenced intellectually as to lead necessarily to knowledge, culture, moral rectitude, good conduct, and the setting of a good example. In sum, its aim is moral, ethical, methodical, and artistic. The language of Pharaonic maxims is the result of deep reflection. These maxims.
I'm sorry. Let me pause you again. I feel like those groups of people that say read and then they just stop people. But yeah, I just wanted to pause for a second because as simple as this may be, this is profound. I think that's why I recommend. I think everyone should get this book, and read through it and really put it, put some time into studying it, because it says an Egyptian maxim is in effect a veritable ritual performance. So, and it said it should be so sequenced. Now, that ties into, in my mind, that brings to mind, curriculum, pedagogy, andragogy. These are ways of teaching where information has to be organized, and in order for information to be effective, It has to be organized and sequenced. And so when it says it should be sequenced intellectually as to lead necessarily to knowledge, that to me that describes exactly what the profession of teaching is all about. You're supposed to organize information and then put it together in such a way where it is incremental, where people can learn something, then advance to the next step, next step, next step, and it's done in a sequential order. And as it says, leads to knowledge, culture, moral rectitude, good conduct, and the setting of a good example. So I'm sorry, I just want to kind of point that out. It's like right there, But you can continue.
I had something to add to the last line where it says its sum is to aim moral, ethical, methodical, and artistic. So I think of when it says to the moral, I think of that as the eloquence and principle. And then as far as your ethics would be the eloquence and conduct. And then when it deals with the method, that would be your eloquence and scholarship. And then artistic would be your eloquence and creativity. So basically, I always suggested it's always giving it to put forth your best foot, put forth your best effort.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's excellent. Excellent. And if I'm not mistaken, Brother Antoine, you do some teaching, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, yeah. So I know this I know from a teacher's perspective, I know you can definitely appreciate some of the things that we're reading inside of Theophilo Binga's commentary, but more so the actual Maxims of Ptah Hotep. So I definitely know that you're seeing it through a certain lens. So that's good. But I'm sorry, Damo, I think that was you that was reading, and I don't want to get like those crew read and then stop, give me verse. But yeah, go ahead. So we might be cutting you off a few times.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
Book
I ain't
of book of book of Banga.
yeah, the Book of Obanga. Read verse 188.
Yeah, both of y'all make good
Oh,
points, especially
okay.
for
No, go ahead, and then I'll just before you go on to read, I just wanted to say, sorry to interrupt. Because when you talk about ritual, what I get
You,
is something
you,
that
you you sound a little bit low, unless you could speak a little bit.
am I still low?
No, there you go. It's fine.
All right, okay. I was just saying that when I hear the word ritual, then what I get from that is something that we do something that you do consistently over and over again, and this comes with the when we're talking about moral and ethical behavior. It's like we have some people who probably might say like, I will only treat somebody good if they respect me. I respect them, and if you don't respect me, and it's like when it's something that you do as a ritual, when you treat people with respect, the respect it should be reserved for everybody, no matter whether you're being disrespected or not. So I just wanted to add that because some people always like I'll treat people the way you treat me. If you treat me bad, that I treat you bad. If you treat me good, I treat you good. But it's some the moral and ethical behavior we should display, something that should be done at all times, without lacking.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and that remind me of a long time ago, and one of my friends a long time ago. I remember we got into an argument about sharing, and we were at a soda machine, and I asked him if he could buy me a soda or give me a sip of his soda or drink or whatever it was, and he said no because I never gave him a sip of a drink that I had. And so we got into an argument because I went straight logic on him. I was like, well, if that's true, and if I felt the same way, then we would never share with each other because who would start it off? Who somebody would have to share first to get that going. You know what I mean? So and that was just that's just a childhood thing, but it goes into what you just said about the consistency. Like you said, ritual performance. Ritual is consistent. So it's like regardless of how somebody else's character is, and that's a key. Just because someone else has bad character does not mean that you trade in your good character and then put on a cloak of bad character just to um, deal with them. And on a regular, speech, we say, don't stoop to their level. We'll use the phrase, don't stoop to their level, or I'm not going to come down to your level. You know, we have this and we spoke about this earlier with brother Chris. I don't know if he's in here yet, but we spoke about these metaphoric ways that we use words, like how consciousness is seen directional. Like to be conscious is to be elevated, like you know, to raise up, and to be depressed or down, or depressed or pessimistic, whatever. We identify that with being low or down. So in these directional or spatial words, we use conscious. To be conscious is up, or to be good is up, and to be bad is down. So I don't want to stoop down to your level. You know what I'm saying? So that's just real. That's just interesting. But we find that in ancient Kemet, in the language Ronnie Kemet as well. But yeah, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. Ritual performance, and also comes to mind as well with ritual performance is consistency in another sense. You can't have good character one day, and then the next day you just display bad character. And we see that in the social community as well, where somebody will do something based on impulse because they don't have self-control over their mental faculties. They'll do something on impulse, and then they may wake up and realize it, and then they will apologize, but then they turn around and do that same thing again. So what's the value of that apology, or what's the value of acknowledging that you were wrong if you're not going to be consistently judging yourself and then trying to improve yourself? So we all have to be careful with that. But I'm sorry, brother Damo, you can go on in, and probably be cutting you off some more, but go ahead.
All right. The language of Pharaonic maxims is a result of deep reflection. These maxim and wise sayings are concepts, philosophy, and practice. So they didn't just talk about it. It was actually something where some action went into it. Philosophy and practice,
Hmm.
and deep reflection. They offer practical advice in such areas as table manners, like don't reach for food, take what's closest to you, watch your tongue. Kind of sound like some of the stuff we hear from our parents growing up. Above all, they focus on essential ethical concerns. They offer advice about personal conduct and recommend a judicious balance, respect for others, self-control, the careful monitoring of one's thoughts and emotions, dar ib ek, temper your heart. All this naturally brings into play the faculties of reason and reflection. And I picked up on that word naturally. And then as I'm reading, one thing I'm going over is I'm picking up also when it talks about the balance. It makes me think that, they had to get along. It was a certain way of living, and then it kind of confirms, why this way of living or some of these ways, these maxims that they listened to that came from different philosophies in practice,
Hmm.
while the civilization lasted in harmony for so long.
Hmm.
Because I'm thinking if they were going the opposite direction, where they wasn't practicing balance, where they were being combative, where they did have bad character, a society wouldn't last for hundreds and thousands. You couldn't get that type of unity. I mean, after a while, you can see it eroded internal conflict, but for so long it was good, and it seems like it's because a lot of people were listening to the maxims and had them in practice, and like my Sinet said, I mean, all the time, ritually. It wasn't just a once a time. That's what I picked up so far. But anybody else got anything?
Yeah, I want to say that's a good point you brought up about the longevity of the civilization itself, because in dealing with this, you kind of see some of the elements that had to have been at play in the fall of Kemet. A lot of people ask, if Kemet was so great and so this and that, how did it fall? How did it, what happened and things. So and now obviously every single person living in the Nile Valley was not perfect and was not good, and probably did not adhere to the laws and so on and so forth. But it's the preponderance of the people. It's statistically, the percentage of the people that did do whatever it took to for the benefit of the whole. Obviously, that outweighed the other way, and by it outweighing it, it sustained it. And then when it gets imbalanced, as you said, then it starts swaying the other way. You know, very rarely will you have 100% of anything when you're dealing with a mass amount of people, but it's the preponderance of those people, or the percentage of the people that are doing the right thing, outweighing those who are doing the wrong thing, that will provide that longevity or that tenure in terms of time. But also, what sticks out here is where it says they offered. You can see my cursor. They offered advice. They, meaning being the Maxims, offered advice about personal conduct and recommended a judicious balance, but respect for others, and here self-control and the careful monitoring of one's thoughts and emotions. And as you read, Dar Ek, which means temper your heart, which means monitor your thoughts and emotions. And as we know, our emotions are made analogous to animals, the animal impulse. And there's a saying, or question in the form of a saying, wisdom saying. The question is, do you walk your dog, or does your dog walk you? And that's to say, are you in control and command of your emotions, or do you allow your emotions to control you? And biologically, people who study genetics and the physical anatomy of the human being and things like that, we all know that the frontal lobe or frontal cortex of the brain is functions to regulate the other parts of the brain. They say we have three, and some say we have four brains, so to speak, and the higher brain controls the functions and things of the other ones. So if your frontal lobe or frontal cortex is not fully functional, fully developed, or what have you, then the lower parts of your brain, what they call a reptilian part of your brain, or your mammalian part of your brain, will, and reptiles and mammals, in terms of animals, are animals. So you're going to let the other animal parts of your brain to regulate and control you, or are you going to control it by way of your higher parts of your brain and things like that, your mental faculties? Are you going to utilize those to domesticate those animals, or are you going to let those animals run wild and control you? So that's what this brings up. But
Yeah, when you from that paragraph, when I'm getting, they offered advice about personal conduct and recommended a judicious balance. And so when you think about that balance, I think of individuals keeping their hormones in balance, individuals having chemical imbalance, so things of that nature. And then also I think about when you talked about building character, and you talked about the Institute of Freemasonry and different institutes that help with developing these characteristics. One of the things that they use, masonry tools, was a balance, to make sure that the things was leveled.
mhm.
And so make sure so the level is a tool of balance. So that goes back to the building aspect.
Yeah, that's true. Now, when you just said that, it reminded me that we do have institutions of character building. It's just that they're failing us, because really, the educational system, the schooling system, is a behavioral modification system, institution. Because we send our children to school 8 hours a day for 5 days out of the week. And then year after year after year, it's going to mold the child's character. So it's a behavioral modification institution. Religion is a behavioral modification institution. People go to church. Ideally, it's supposed to be a guidance, serve as a guidance. You're supposed to learn. It's supposed to be, supposed to build your character. You're supposed to, come into accordance with the laws of God, whatever God you believe in. and things like that. So religion is a behavioral modification system, you know, and maybe and then a byproduct of the media, you know, entertainment and stuff, music and entertainment becomes a behavioral modification system because of the influence that it has, you know. So we have some systems in place. It's just that these systems are not working for our benefit. But so yeah, that's just please somebody remind me of how long our time is, because I definitely don't want to go too far over um 2 hours. And I know we just touched on two paragraphs and we kind of built on it. And if anybody has any questions or comments inside the chat for the YouTube, let me know, because I can't see it while I'm sharing my screen.
All right, you want to go to the next
Yes.
paragraph? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm always interrupting you. But anyway, yeah, talking about the schools as a character building institution, I would like to just add that this is where um, the African school of thought comes in, and it's very helpful. And I know that we have a lot of people that talk about, you know, being African, and we romanticize a lot of things about Africa and Kemet, but we do not apply all those things. We might say, I want to be African, but what are the principles? What, the culture that comes with it? We can. It's not like a buffet where we can just take we can take certain things we like and then dispose of certain things that we don't like and then call ourselves African. And I'm talking about this as growing up in Africa. And I remember well, when I was young, and I had bad character pretty much. And I remember my parents shipping me off to a boarding school, and that was one of the places where it actually, I learned about good conduct. I learned about respect. I learned about self-control. And because like we say, when you look at the glyph for Seba and on the hieroglyph, and you see the man with a stick, that is how that's pretty much how we were taught in school, with a stick. And I got the end of that a couple of times, a lot of times, pretty much. And I think that's we don't have that in the Western culture, even, and you see the outcome of all of that stuff, respecting the elders. Like we know about a lot of people who talk about okay, I'm not, I'll respect my elders, but if an elder disrespect me, they don't deserve my respect. That is not African. We don't even have that. You don't, like, you look at it in a way that like, your elder is, you have your parents, your mother and your father, and every elder in your community is your mother and your father. So, and we know that a lot of times we feel disrespected by our mothers and fathers. And so the question is, how do you tackle a situation where you feel disrespected by your mother and father? Do you lash out at them? Do you mouth off? Like, we don't do that. So in that way, we don't do that as well with other elders, no matter how wrong we may feel that they are. Is we never do that in an African perspective. So, but I see that a lot. Growing up, part of it, me growing up in out of Africa as well. I see the differences. Out here we can be disrespectful to elders. But it is not African. And I just wanted to add that, and to speak about the institutions. Like, so we get that at home, but also in the schools that in Africa, they also offer that molding of the character and all that. So
Yeah,
I just wanted to add that.
that's excellent. Dua, for sharing that. So I take it that you kind of made good friends with that stick, huh?
Very much so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Dua, for sharing that. Yeah. Today, yeah, I don't know. It's probably different for different states here in the United States, but I don't think anybody is allowed to touch children in schools nowadays. Probably in some isolated places, but I know in my junior high school in Washington D.C., I went to Shaw Junior High School. Shout out to Shaw. Anybody who had been there, but at my junior high school, they we they were allowed paddling, but only two staff members was allowed to actually do the paddling. and they were the gym teachers, you know, like the strongest people in the school, was given the permission to paddle people who, you know, be, you know, disobedient, bad children or whatnot, you know. So and then obviously your child going to that school, your parent gave the consent, you know, all of that was taken care of formally on paper, but that was really good. I mean, we had a respect for the teachers and the staff and everything like that. And I'm happy to have been exposed to that. And I can say I never got the paddle, but I had friends that did, and you know whatnot. I wasn't perfect, but I, you know, smart enough to kind of dodge the paddle. But you know, we respected the teachers and everything like that. So I see the and it goes back to discipline, and that's something that we're lacking. And one of the sayings that we know now today is you spare the rod, you spoil the child. And then nobody wants a spoiled child who grows up to become a rotten adult, you know. So we really have to get back to the basics, and I think that that's, you know, that's the point of why we're even talking about this. So if we can at least get through this third paragraph, and then we can kind of you know, kind of talk about it, open it up, and see if anybody else has anything to say on the YouTube channel, whatever. But o Obinga 189, read.
Yeah, I just wanted to say dua to Sinette for sharing that story. That's a first-hand account of what we're talking about. It's not just coming straight from the book, but you actually have a first-hand account of it, a first-hand witness account of someone growing up in it, seeing it, a first-hand attestation. All right, I'll go ahead and read. The Maxims also advocate simplicity and humility. Aha, ek. Do not be arrogant. Do not be conceited. Har about rek ek. What you know. Nej arek. Consult with him, the illiterate man, me, as with rek, the cultivated man, in a need to. No one can attain. I know I'm brutalizing the words, but you know that's still a work in progress. But the letters are true to what it means. No one can attain through the limits Hemet of knowledge. In other words, one is never sufficiently qualified in any department of science or art. The high spiritual value of these maxims lies in their advocacy of general culture as a requisite for the happy life. Let me read that again. The high spiritual value of these maxims lies in their advocacy of general culture as a requisite for the happy life. In this respect, Plato was wise to propose the Egyptian educational system as a model for his young compatriots.
Hmm. That's that's good because it shows that Egypt, and you know, people may be familiar with the stories of the Greek literature. You know, if you survey the Greek literature, they talk about the use of the Egyptian model for the model of the Republic in Greece, um, or whatever, and the educational system. You know what I mean? Um, so that's good. That's good. And it says, do not be arrogant. Do not be conceited about what you know. So, and this is another thing. This is also another thing. Knowledge or truth, even though you can be 100% right, 100% accurate, 100% right, reality for real. You know, as we say, for real. But if you don't deliver it in a proper way, you can be 100% right, but have a messed up disposition about yourself, a messed up delivery, messed up way of conveying the accurate information. Then you're wrong. You know, so on the streets, we hear the phrase, it's not always what you do, but it's how you look doing what you do. You know, that's like one of the old timers phrases that we hear around. You know, so there's a season for everything as well, because you can do the right thing at the wrong time, but then you'll be wrong. So it's all about doing the right thing at the right time. You know what I mean, as well. So, and that comes with within these maxims, or within this wisdom that's imparted upon from the elders who've experienced these things to the youth. You know, and the youth versus elder relationship is definitely a two-way relationship, and I think we spoke on that before. Excuse me, before as well. There's a two-way relationship, and that kind of speaks to what Sonette Tonica mentioned earlier about ritual performance. No matter how old you are and how young you are, you still respect. Although you're older in age, you've been around the sun more than the next person, um, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't respect that person. You know, and I believe that's one of the maxims. Uh, we had talked about that earlier. I don't have it pulled up on the screen, but one of the maxims is speaks exactly to what I just said. Let me find it real quick. It says, hmm, if any of y'all know which one it is off the top, and I do not see it. Oh, here we go. It is, no, actually, I do have it on the screen. Sorry. Or do I? No, I stopped there. But it says, actually, after this line that you see on the screen where it says, to as a skill profitable to the attentive learner, but harmful to the disobedient. Right after that, it says, now he said to his son, this is Ptah Hotep speaking to his son, he says, do not be arrogant about your knowledge, but take advice from the ignorant as you do from the wise, because the limits of an art are unattainable, and there is no professional so skilled as to have achieved complete mastery of his art. In other words, knowledge is an ongoing pursuit from cradle to the grave, as they say, you know, and you're also supposed to not be arrogant about your knowledge. So just because you know a whole bunch of stuff, or just because you're older in age, don't be arrogant with it. And then you're also supposed to take advice from those who aren't as skillful or literate as you are as well, because you can learn, and then the I guess the the full end of the spectrum of that would be, in those commercials we used to see back in the day where it says you could learn a lot from a dummy, but not in a negative way as a dummy, somebody's dumb, but you can learn from people who are, you can even learn from people who are not as skillful as you are in some form of fashion. We can learn from everyone in all directions. So this thing is a two-way street, you know. Um, but that's all that I had presented on the slide. Now, we can continue the conversation, but before we do, I want to recommend a couple of books that speak on good character, just to kind of um, have people aware of a couple of books that speak on it. We have a book by Dr. Bakedi Amin called A Life, Centered Life, Living Maat. That's an excellent book. We have also a book from the University of Kemet Press from the team of Ife Kilimanjaro, Dakar Kilimanjaro, and Yahra Aneb, and also Tagamba Heru. They wrote a book called Maat, Guiding Principles of Moral Living. Those are excellent books. The Teachings of Ptah Hotep, the oldest book in the world, by Asa Hillard, and also Larry Williams and Nia Damali. Then we have a book on a warrior's character written by Mwalimu Bomani Baruti. He's out of down here in Georgia. It's called Iwa. Then we have the Hosea, a lot of people are familiar with that, by Malana Karinga. And another one, book by Malefe Keti Asante, called The Egyptian Philosophy, or excuse me, The Egyptian Philosophers. All right, and that's just some of them. There's more. but those come to mind, and I definitely recommend it. You know, you definitely have those on your shelf. Not on your shelf to collect dust, but on your shelf they should have fingerprints and highlights and bookmarks all through them and everything. You know, but those are some recommended books. And then, you know, if you think of some more, post them on Facebook or whatever the case is. But I just wanted to recommend those books um, as books that speak to good character. Then also the one that we're reading out of, Dr. Theophilo Benga's African Philosophy. All right. And before we go keep going on and on, I definitely want to refer everyone to our website, www.mdw-nTr.com. That's mdw-nTr.com. On that site, you can learn all about us as a group called Seshew mdw-nTr. Then also find out all about our classes and lessons on how to learn Seshew mdw-nTr, which are the hieroglyphs, how to read, transliterate, and translate it. I actually have an upcoming class that's about to start in the month of July, which is in a few days from now. A new class is forming to begin. It's a 12-week certification class. We meet for 2 hours once a week for 12 weeks. All right. You can find out more information on the website and actually register or contact me directly. You can inbox me on Facebook at Wujau Iri Maat, or you can email info@mdw-nTr.com. All right. The book is available on Amazon.com and also available on the website. Okay, so with that out the way, I am going to stop sharing my screen and we can continue the discussion. And if anybody had any questions on YouTube or Facebook or whatever the case is, definitely welcome any questions or comments or anything. And even we also have room inside the actual hangout itself. So if anybody wants to join the panel, let us know. You know, I don't know how long we've been on, but we've been on for a considerable amount of time. But I always say sleep is for the weak. But on the good topics, we can keep it going and discuss it. I think it's an important and a very important topic because, believe me, good character, I'm telling you, good character will eliminate a lot of the things that we don't like or things that we see people complain about in the social community. And then it's kind of tricky because there's a lot of people who complain and there's a lot of people who aren't complaining because we've actually become complacent where it's become the norm to see the disrespect. You know, we become numb to it. And I don't think we should ever do that. You know, me personally, I don't have a tolerance for bad character. And I wouldn't want my children growing up developing a numbness or a tolerance to it as well. You know, I do my best as a father. I have 3 daughters, and I'm doing my best to raise them. You know, children don't pop out of the belly with an instruction manual, and they always say that it takes a village to raise a child, and that saying comes from the concept of your village or your community is always looked at as a womb, as a womb that grooms and shapes the person, and that grooming in that womb is your environment, and it becomes your culture, and that culture molds your character, and your character is expressed as your nationality, as we call it today. Obviously, they didn't call it that back then, but your nationality, your character. What character do you have? What do you express? And that expression is a result of your membership within a community. But today we call it a nation. So we have these terms, nationality and then nation. You know, people walking around, you know, what's your nationality, or we should deal with nation building and things like that. Well, we first have to start by building the household first. First, you have to build yourself, and then build your household, then build your community before we can talk about a nation building, because your nation is going to start to mold people. So you have to ask yourself, what kind of people are we going to be producing? And right now, that's why I personally refuse to call the conscious community, because we're not developing conscious people. but we are developing people who are social. So I always refer to it as a social community because that's one thing that I can observe 24/7. We are being social. Um, and then consciousness technically simply means to be aware. So people are aware of a whole bunch of things. But in terms of, you know, a worthwhile meaning of being conscious, conscious of what? Since we're conscious, anybody who's walking awake is conscious. So for us to designate and point out a conscious community is like redundancy unless you're talking about something specific that we're conscious of, and the idea of a conscious community is an elevation or an advancement of being conscious of a certain level of information that's going to benefit of us as a people. And we got to really do better. We just have to really do better, and it starts with the installation of good character in people, period, because bad character is what causes people not to be able to be corrected. Someone makes a claim on Facebook, and they're incorrect, and then someone comes along and corrects them or whatever. It's done so in a very combative way. It's set up to be very combative. And then if your person doesn't have good character, they can't be corrected. So then the back and forth arguing, and then the disrespect comes into play, and then so on and so forth. We see it all the time. And then, at the end of the rope, unfortunately, sometimes it may get into threats, uh, physical threats. And how are you going to physically threat someone based on a non-physical um, um, activity? You know, so that speaks to someone's character because that's your animal part of your being. That's responding instead of the higher part of your mental faculties responding. You're supposed to respond to a physical threat with a physical threat. But if somebody verbally disagreeing with you, for a person to resort to physical threats or these veiled threats, as some people may call it, and things like that, we just have to do better. And I'm speaking in general, because we see it in different places, different contexts, whether it's in person or online or what have you. We just overall need to do better. So I'm glad we had this conversation, and we could talk all night about it. Really.
I got a quick question. Actually, someone in the chat had put this up, and you had showed the comparison of character in this antonym. So they kind of asked about isfet, and how does that kind of relate to character or isfat and its duality as far as Mayat.
Well, yeah. Well, now we didn't really touch on Ma'at specifically, but this all ties into Ma'at. And if we would have read further in Dr. Theophilus book, as I said, he does an excellent job at giving commentary about all of this. And we don't have time to read through it, but we would have, all of this is connected to Ma'at, and I'm trying to find it on the page real quick. Um, hmm. I think I'm being a little too fast. I don't even see it right this minute. But the reason why I'm bringing it up though is because Isfat is always positioned in opposition to Ma'at, because people compare Ma'at to Isfat, or order compared to chaos, and they would assign order to Ma'at and chaos to Isfat, or Ma'at to law and Isfat to unlawfulness and things like that. But it ties into what we're talking about in terms of moral rectitude, ethical, um, being ethical and things like that. When a person is not in compliance with the natural order things, I'm trying to find it in the book because Dr. Ifalabenga breaks it down pretty good. I think I'm skimming a little too
So
fast.
May I on 218.
I see some on 189 too.
Okay, maybe that's why I skipped. Because when I look at that page.
The virtuals on 207.
Okay, yeah. Let me just read this real quick then. This is on page 189 in African philosophy. It says the highest value in these maxims is placed on a constant quest for truth and justice. And then the phrase is given, Wor Ma'at, which means great is justice. This is an axiom in constant use from the time of Wasir or Osiris, that is to say, from the beginnings of time. In the philosophy of Pharaonic Egypt, Ma'at is a concept of central importance. It it implies order, universal balance, cosmic regulation, justice, truth in justice, rectitude, and moral uprightness. The concept of balanced order is the permanent basis of Pharaonic civilization. Balanced order brings peace, which is Hotep, condemns crime, which is Jarit, and evil, Ben or Jut. Whoever breaks the law, and the law being the word Hepu or laws, is punished, Chesef, as a matter of course. Okay, and then it goes on to say, people in authority are therefore advised to govern with mercy and in peace. Subordinates owe respect to superiors. Authoritarian conduct is decried as unacceptable. Ma'at, the basis of social order, is a value that can neither be bought nor bargained away. The social order secretes benevolence and loving kindness without stifling personal initiative and work. Ma'at castigates slander, lying, defamation, boastfulness, and flattery. All persons, great or humble, rich or poor, deserve respect. Such are unequivocal prescriptions of Ma'at. Order is a categorical imperative. Nedr Ma'at M. Sini S. Stick to the truth, do not exaggerate. In last analysis, what prevails is justice, i.e. Ma'at. So, and then he goes on to explain that. But Isfet would be counter to that, or not, would involve any of that. So it kind of goes hand in hand with bad character. All right, we kind of didn't get into Isfet or that because we're trying to emphasize the guidance for good character. As long as we know what good character is, anyone who's not a part of that is obviously doing something a little different. All right, so I just wanted to kind of put that out there. I don't know if that answers the brother's question um, precisely, but we didn't actually cover Isfet. But Isfet would fall up under that, and it could be included in the conversation as being opposed to the things that we're talking about that would fall up under Ma'at. And this is another thing, a lot of people go around claiming Ma'at, but Ma'at is a term that encompasses a lot of different things. There's books written on Ma'at. I mean Ma'at people, we tend to kind of belittle Ma'at as a principle, as a concept, etc., because we'll just define Ma'at as order, balance, reciprocity, what else? Law, and things like that. But Ma'at encompasses more than that, and it's very, very deep. It's a very, very deep principle and thought that falls up under that umbrella. Ma'at also deals with love. It deals with family. And there's a reason why it deals with love and family as well, because love and family, or family, when you think of family, you think of relationships. And when you think of relationships in a technical sense, relationships can be described as law, or law can be described as relationships, because that's what laws are. How do two or more things relate to each other? How do they interact with each other? This interaction is expressed as a law. So the relationships, like even grammar. Because we're dealing with languages, when we talk about grammar, although we use the word grammar, grammar is the law of language, how words relate to one another, and syntax being the word order and so on and so forth. But that could be looked at as law. And so whenever we talk about law, it's how things relate to one another, the interconnectedness of things. But Ma'at as a universal principle deals with the interconnectedness and the inter um, relationships of all things. That's why when you start to use the word cosmic law, natural law, the laws of nature and things like that, how are all of these things interacting with one another? Because in the African worldview, in the African mind, there's no such thing as supernatural. Nothing's above nature. Everything is natural. And the creator and creation is one and the same. And creation is not something that is static, that took place in the past. Creation is always ever going, ever ongoing, I should say. So creation is a constant unfolding, and these unfoldings that take place are established by law, or they express laws because everything is connected and interrelated, interconnected to one another. So how are they done? They're done by expressions of laws, and these laws are encompassed in the deification of this expression was done by a feminine principle that we call Ma'at. And this is one of the other things that Dr. Theophilo Benga speaks about. So on page 191, he says, now let's add a few remarks on Ma'at and the philosophical sources of the Greek morals. The concept of Ma'at is complex, multi-layered. To understand it, we need to examine it on three levels. Level one, on the universal level, the concept of Ma'at expresses the harmony of the elements as clearly established, each in its right place. This is the concept of the ordered whole, or the cosmos. Level two, on the political level, the concept of Ma'at works against injustice. It is the name of Ma'at that the pharaoh subjugates rebels and dominates foreign lands. Level three, on the individual level, Ma'at embraces specific rules for living in concert with moral principles. Whoever lives according to these rules and principles achieves universal order in his or her own life, in practical terms, and lives in harmony with the ordered whole. The most accomplished, useful, and appropriate human actions are circumscribed in the cosmological order, as symbolized by the way the pharaoh's name is written inside a circular cartouche, a perfect geometrical shape representing the vitalizing sun. All right, so that's coming from Dr. Theophilo Benga on page 191 and 192. Um, so again, all of these things come into play, and it speaks directly to the subject matter of building good character. All right. So, with any other comments, questions? Anybody did volunteer to come into the hangout?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Any questions, comments, anything shared from the panel? If not, then we can.
Yeah, I just want to say, that the books you put up there, um, along with other ones that we've talked about, I just advise everybody to try and get your hands on them and just check them out if you don't already have them. It's real good
Yeah,
stuff.
we got a question from the panel. Real quick.
Okay. Yeah.
It says, it's a pretty good question. How do you feel if there's a person in your group that is arrogant and obnoxious and sometimes disrespectful? Do you give them a pass? It's kind of, how you deal with people who are not presenting good character.
Oh, well, that kind of goes without saying, but whether they're part of your immediate circle, I mean inner circle, or wherever the case is, if we are to be our brothers and sisters keeper, then we shouldn't give it a pass, because that's the whole thing. You spare the rod, you spoil the child. And it just so happens I actually posted up something on Facebook today, speaking about being an enabler, because when you ignore the wrongdoings of people, especially those who you know, because that's who you have access to. If you are a friend of someone, then the question is, are you really being a friend if you know that they're doing something wrong or harmful to themselves or others or whatever the case is, and you just let it slide? Are you really being a friend in that sense? So is friendship is friendship equated to being a yes person? Or is a friendship, or is a friend is showing love by way of correcting that person, pulling their coattail,
But
doing
I
it.
guess that's I guess like how it relates to Mayat. The question is, are you going against Mayat by trying to discipline that person? Is that going against Mayat?
Right. No, discipline the person is in accordance to, because that's what it's about. you know it's just, even in discipline, and we didn't have time to read the maxims, but there are a lot of maxims of Ptah Hotep and Ka Gimni, as I mentioned earlier. But a lot of these maxims speak to your exact um, question and what you said. But there's a way to do it as well, you know to correct people, because some people, like I said earlier, like you can be all right, you can have all the facts you want to, that you can have a bag full of facts, but if you don't deliver it correctly, then you'll end up being wrong, even though you're holding what's right. So there's tact. It's called tact. There's a way to do things, and like I said before, it's not what you do. Sometimes it is how you look doing what you're doing. So this kind of speaks to the correction of elders. I know there was a previous hangout. How do we correct elders? You know, One, elders are not above correction, just like your fellow brother, fellow comrade, fellow colleague. They're not. Nobody's above correction. Everybody should be correctable. People who are not correctable, I think they call it incorrigible, or I believe that's the word. But everybody should be correctable. And if you're not correctable, then that speaks to your character, and then that's how you lash out and get obscene and disrespectful and start threatening with violence and things like that. But still a way to do it, because you don't want to pour gas on fire, or pour salt on an open wound. So people just got to use their common sense on how to do it. But everyone should be able to be corrected. And then if you're going to correct someone, you have to make sure that you are actually correcting them, because there are people who attempt to correct others, but they are just as wrong as others. And this kind of goes into um, discernment of facts versus fiction, things like that. What's incorrect versus what's correct and stuff like that. That goes into your research methodology, your methods of discernment, how scientifically literate you are in terms of the process, to how do you know when you know something, and that's what science is all about. And a true scientist is a person who is very correctable. Matter of fact, the scientific method, you're constantly trying to eliminate error, and by eliminating error, you're always trying to prove your hypothesis wrong. And this is where we get the word falsifiable from. If it's not falsifiable, then it's not science, in a nutshell. And this is why, with people that are in belief systems, there's a video on YouTube, and it's called something like my shortest debate ever. And if you watch it, it's a young gentleman. He's I guess he's walking down the street, and then some people who are part of a religious belief system, they approach him, about Jesus, and they're trying to talk to him about Jesus, and the guy mentions that Jesus died for his sins, or Jesus is the savior, his personal savior, who died for everybody's sins or whatever. And the guy they were talking to, it asked him, well, um, how do you know that, or do you know that? And the guy said, yeah, I know that. He said, are you sure? He said, yeah, I'm sure. He said, are you positive? Yes, I'm positive. He said, okay then, thank you very much. And that ended the conversation, because if the person is so sure about what they're saying, then there's no need to have any kind of debate or argument, because you're already stuck. You've already showed that you're not willing to view anything any other way. So there's no need to even have a further conversation. And that's the opposite of what science is about. Science, you're engaging in an internal conversation to prove or falsify your assumptions and hypotheses and things like that. You're trying to narrow things down. You're trying to chip away. The word science ultimately comes from words to mean to cut, to slice, to cut away. So, but yeah, we're still live. So I definitely, definitely gone over 2 hours. I'm not sure exactly how far we've gone, but if there's no more questions, or if people, we can kind of go off air and continue the conversation. If anybody wants to join in on the conversation as far as in the panel, on the Hangout, then let me know in the chat or on Facebook. But for now, we're going to end the live stream. And I want to say dua for everyone who took the time out to hang out with us and participate, and those who will be watching the archives. All right. Anybody have any closing remarks on the panel?
Nope. Shem Hotep.
No one else? Going once, going twice? Speak now and forever hold your peace.
Now we're good.
All right. So with that, I'll say Shem Hotep and Gore Nefir to all those who are watching.